Oh, hello, good morning. My last post was about drafting the pattern for my Little Women button-down dress. And I have my muslin all completed, so I thought that I would journal with you how that went and the adjustments that I did to perfect the fit. So here is the muslin. It's on my Beatrice Forms dress form. So this is my actual body. And I made my actual arm. There's a tutorial on my blog if you want to make your own arm for your dress form. So here is the finalized muslin after all of the adjustments that I did. So the biggest issue with most button downs is that I have very broad shoulders and they are very much at a right angle. They're not very sloped at all. So I get these big V drag lines when the angle of the shoulder is too steep, then it falls and creates these V drag lines. So I was getting quite a bit. There are still a few. I decided not to fit them all the way out because I, want to be able to move my shoulders. But I added in 1/2 inch at this end of the shoulder seam to sort of equalize the angle a little bit without messing up the circumference of my neckline, and then I'd have to redraft and the whole collar and everything. So I added the width at the top of the shoulder instead of the high point shoulder. Now it lies much more flatly along my chest. The next issue was it's even more perfected on my final pattern. This still shows a bit of the issue, but there's extra gathering here. There's some extra fullness. So I shaved off, I think, total 1/4 inch off the front of this arm cap from my original drafting, which takes all of these little puckers out and makes it lay much more smoothly over my arm. The darts were too far away from the center of my bust, so I added, I think, 1.5/8 to the end of each bust dart point so that they were brought closer to the center by a total of 3/8 of an inch narrowed in the front. So that's like it barely noticeable, but just smooths things out a little bit. I think probably the biggest fit issue is I have very rounded shoulders. I do a lot of braiding, and this pattern piece, it was at a right angle, and there was just so much extra material behind my at the back of my neck. So I angled this, I think by 1/4 inch in this way to take out that extra fabric here. On the muslin I just added in a seam, but for the actual garment I moved the center back line so that it is angled a bit, so that rests much more nicely along my shoulders. Oh, look how beautiful it is. I also lengthened the sleeve by quite a bit because of my very long arms. An issue that I didn't perfect was this right here. This angle isn't it doesn't hang perfectly and sort of bunches and gathers, but I was like, who has the time to fuss with something when you're moving your shoulders all the time? Who's gonna notice that? So I left that. This will hang, it sort of goes like this, but it'll hang much more evenly once the skirt is attached, and the pockets will add extra weight to the side seams. So I feel good about that. I've already completed the bodice in my actual fabric, so it's too late to do anything about this, but for the next time I make this pattern, I want to bring these points a little bit more towards the center front instead of pointing so far out that way. And I also want to narrow the collar by probably 1/4 of an inch just to slim things up a little bit. The fabric that I'm using, excuse me darling, is this cotton. It's a gingham, and I over-dyed it. It used to be this very bright, like sky blue, and I over-dyed it with forest green and black liquid Rit dye. So this is much more my color palette. I think it's still pretty blue though, and I think once I finish the garment, I'm just gonna over-dye the entire garment green and black again, try to get it to pick up some more teal tones and just darken the color a little bit. So that's the goal, that's the plan. Hopefully it works. I'll come back next time with my bodice and show you what happened. Have a wonderful day. I don't have an outro.